And the fans in California, they were waiting for you. Sold the place out.
Goodness gracious, that Pomona was just unbelievable.
Don, this is the latest car. But what was the first car you ever went down a drag strip in?
It's a little 40 Ford convertible. I drove it to high school, and of course drag racing really fit my needs real well because you could go with the same car you drove on the street, in opposed to round track racing where you had to have an extra car. And we went up to Zephyr Hills with this little car. We used to race like once a month. I have one in the museum. It's not the very one, but it's one just like it.
Let's have a look.
Okay.
I can't wait to see the museum, the whole one. Let this car take us back to the late 40s. It was in high school that you first became interested in cars?
Yes, it was. I was taking accounting in school, and so I really didn't think anything about cars, but the older boys came to school, and they had the cut-down cars and stuff, and I was really caught up in it, and it was something I really loved. And then on top of that, I took a General Metals class in my senior year, and the teacher came to school with one of those real early issues of Hot Rod magazine, and golly, we wore the pages out to class looking at it. And then, of course, I started drag racing on the street because all of the guys were doing it, and I had my 40 convertible. And we didn't have drag strips then. There weren't any.
And out of high school, you pursued that accounting interest?
Yes, I did. I was about 6 months working in one of the large department stores in Tampa. But I was really unhappy, and it was my stepfather who said, Don, you should get into the automobile businesses. That's what you really love. And says, you could waste your whole life doing something that you don't like.
So you served an apprenticeship, as I recall, a paint and body shop, and then opened your own shop.
Yes, I did. I worked for several years just learning the trade, and then in 1956, my wife and I opened our own shop, which was a paint and body shop. It really wasn't even a speech. It was Don's Garage.
What was the first car you actually won a race in?
The first car, well, my wife and I were going over to Lake Wales to the Singing Tower. We had no idea of anything to do with going to a drag. In fact, I had taken off about a year and hadn't drag raced at all during our courtship. And here was a little sign was just kind of written on a piece of paper. It said drags and had an arrow pointing to the Lake Wales airport. And I said, honey, let's run over to the drags and see what's happening. And we entered the 50 Ford in the race and won the very first trophy that I ever won in drag racing. A little tiny plastic thing with a little gold girl standing on the top of it.
But that set the hook.
That was it. I was hooked, and it wasn't a few months later we had cams and dual carburetors on the 50 and boring it out and stroke crankshafts, and it was over.
Was there a guy out there that everybody wanted to be, kind of the Fonz of that era?
Yes, there was. There was Charlie Hogan. They called him King Hogan. He was at the Lake Wales drag strip that day, and he won top eliminator with a V12 Lincoln engine powered old Ford Roadster, like a 27T or something. And he was just absolutely idolized by everyone. And of course, as I went back to the drags and built roadsters, I got a roadster, first a coupe and then a roadster. And finally, I couldn't beat them, and I had to just keep chopping it down and getting it lighter and lighter. And first thing you know, we were almost pure dragsters. And I finally did outrun him, but it took about a year. Right after we outran Hogan for the top eliminator, then the National Hot Rod Association was starting to gain some prominence, and they came through Florida with what they called a drag safari. Not a safety safari, it was a drag. They put on these drag races, regionals. And we went up there and won that race with this little flathead dragster. And they had a party. We were in a car club. We had a car club then called the Strokers, and had this party. And in my honor, for I was the only one that had won anything in the whole club. And then one guy got up there and said, "Well," he says, "I guess this means you're going to retire now from drag racing." you've won top eliminator at the state level, and that's as high as you can ever go, and so